Classic roast rib of beef with Yorkshire puddings, and my gravy today is a mushroom gravy. This is a good holiday feast option for up to like 6 people. There's some tricky timing involved and it could be hard to coordinate for a larger group. There's nothing to do in advance. We'll start cooking like 2.5 hours before dinner. I've got 2 onions that I'm just going to roast whole with my beef, well, half whole. Peel those, and the key is to just barely trim the root end there. Leave a little bit of the base to hold the layers together. A large pan, here's the beef, 4.5 pounds, 2 kilos standing rib roast, which is basically a super thick ribeye steak. There's the cap section of the ribeye, the round, the extra stuff. The butcher tied this, which is nice but not necessary, and they cut the ribs off in advance. I'm just glad they left them for me. In the pan, and in goes the onions, cut side down. These will be good for the gravy, and they'll keep the rest of this pan surface from overheating and scorching. Just a little oil to get it started. Plenty of fat is going to come melting out of it soon. Lots of pepper and salt, smoosh it all around, get the onions too, roast is bone side down, and now is a good time to stick a probe thermometer or 2 into dead center. My oven is blasting at 500 Fahrenheit, 260 C, convection fan on. I'm going to brown the roast first. Check it frequently. Next thing, get a mixing bowl, ideally with a spout, and Yorkshire pudding batter is equal parts by volume eggs, milk, and flour. 3 eggs, like 3/4 cup each of milk and flour there. It doesn't need to be exact. That'll make 6 big Yorkshires. I like to sneak a little garlic powder into a batter like this, not traditional, but good, and a pinch of salt. I would do 2 pinches, but I'm going to be using salted butter with them in just a sec. Oh, a pinch of sugar is nice too, and the batter should look very thin, like crepe batter. The puddings will puff up much taller in the oven if you let this sit for a while, let the flour particles hydrate. Next thing is to move this carton of beef stock into a microwave-safe container and bring it to a boil. I will stir in like an ounce of dried mushrooms, ideally ones sold in little pieces so that we don't have to chop them up fine later. I'm leaving them in the gravy. Dried mushrooms bring vastly more flavor to gravies than fresh ones do, mostly due to the liberation of glutamates from protein breakdown during drying. Just let them soften and steep in the hot water while the roast cooks. Here's the roast after like half an hour at very high heat. I'm roasting it in a pan so that I can easily make the gravy right inside here later. This handle is oven safe. This pan is from Made In, sponsor of this video. Here's a gift I'd be happy to get. 3 sizes of Made In stainless steel frying pans. I still prefer stainless to all other materials for most purposes at home. Good 5-ply steel like this does it all and is so easy to clean and care for. Made In works with multi-generational factories and artisans to make beautifully engineered and built pans used in more than 2,000 top-rated restaurants around the world. I cook with my Made In pans all the time. The handles are comfy and solid. The edge geometry is optimized for the widest possible cooking area and for mitigating drips. Solid workhorses that should get you through many holiday seasons. Get some of the best deals of the year right now with my link in the description. Check out the stainless collection and Made In's other cookware with my link below. Thank you, Made In. Anyway, I've been blasting the roast at 500 Fahrenheit for a half hour. It shouldn't be all the way browned yet, but it should look like halfway where you want it before you take the heat down to its cruising altitude of around 350 Fahrenheit, 180 C. If you didn't lower the temperature, the roast would probably burn on the outside before the inside was cooked. Okay, this is a pan. This is 2 sticks of butter, which is probably twice what we really need. Medium-high heat, let it melt. Yorkshire puddings are traditionally cooked in the drippings from the roast, but I want to use my drippings to make a ton of gravy. An excellent alternative is clarified butter. Bring the butter to a boil, the proteins will rise to the top, and the milk sugars will settle at the bottom, and the water will gradually leave as steam. When the boiling gives way to a gentle sizzle, there's not much water left, and you are done. Don't let anything burn, turn the heat down if needed. Ideally spouted container, sieve, paper towel, which is really the perfect filter to keep out the congealed milk proteins. There's the sugars stuck to the bottom, and all of that can go away. We now have clarified butter. Last little prep is an extra. You don't have to, but lots of finely chopped parsley looks very pretty atop Yorkshire puddings. I want the very center of my roast to be medium rare because the rest of the roast is going to be much more done, and that is good, in my opinion, variety. So after an hour and a half of total cooking, I'm pulling this at 120 Fahrenheit, 49 C. It will carry over a few more degrees as it rests. This is a muffin tin. You can do Yorkshires in cupcake tins, but these are bigger, and I think the bigger ones are a lot more impressive looking. This goes in the oven empty to get hot, and I'm bringing the temperature back up to 500 Fahrenheit, 260 C. Hey, a really useful thing for a dinner like this is a heat-safe serving tray. Somebody gave us this one for our wedding, and we use it every Christmas or Thanksgiving. I can use this to reheat the beef after it is rested and sliced. Rest on a plate or something to catch the juices. My roast onions I will move to the platter whole so they can keep warm over low flame over there. Turn on a higher flame under my gravy pan there, and being sure to protect my hand, I will whisk in enough flour to make a paste with my pan drippings. That's our roux to thicken this, and while I let it toast up for a minute, I will get a slotted spoon to fish out most of my rehydrated mushroom chunks. You don't have to put them in the gravy. The flavor is in the stock now, but I like the chunkies. Once in, I can start whisking in the mushroom beef stock itself, a little at a time so that you're not sloshing around too much, mixing it in smooth with the roux, and you can deglaze the bottom of the pan with the whisk as you go. And I'll hold back on that last little bit of liquid because if there was sandy grit on those mushrooms, most of it will have settled onto the very bottom. That's why I had to fish out the solids, throw away that last bit of liquid. Bring this up to a boil to gelatinize the starch, and that thickness looks perfect to me. I might even need to thin it out with some water or the juices from my roast. My muffin tin is rocket hot now. I can pour in a nice pool of clarified butter into each cup. If the butter wasn't clarified, it would probably burn, and it would certainly make lots of little brown spots on the puddings. This is probably more than I need, but you want enough for the puddings to literally fry a little. Batter straight into the hot fat. Fill the cups only 2/3 of the way to the top, or else they will spill over prematurely. Like I said, it looks really nice to put parsley on top at this stage. It ends up looking like the cilantro on a loaf of naan or something. We get the pan and the fat hot in advance to help maximize oven spring, steam building up inside the batter and making it puff up before the exterior hardens. It'll take like 20 minutes in the oven. A quick vegetable we can do with that is asparagus. Cut off the woody ends onto the roasting tray, oil and season them. Asparagus may not be traditional because it doesn't grow in the winter, but everywhere is spring now because globalism, and asparagus cooks in like 10 minutes really well in the super high temperature that we're using for the Yorkshires, which are like halfway there. Now is the time for us to carve up the roast, get the string and the ribs off. After that, you could just slice against the grain. You get slices that look like that. Delicious, but lots of blubbery intermuscular fat and connective tissue that people usually cut around on their plates. I like to grab the roast and tear the different muscles apart from each other along their natural seams. Just pull at a seam, let it tear where it wants to tear naturally. The blubbery fat and stuff is in the seams, which are now exposed, so we can trim that stuff off and out. And when we're done with that, we can lay each muscle down on its side, slice it perfectly against its own grain for nice tender slices. That's the eye muscle. I'll take that to our warming serving platter. Here's the cat muscle, my favorite. Trim the worst of the fat off, and the grain on this one actually runs in a different direction. That's another advantage of pulling the muscles apart. Each one can be sliced as it requires. I'll cut the ribs apart so I can gnaw on them onto the platter to reheat. The puddings are almost done. The centers are still a little doughy, but a couple of minutes later, there we are. They will start to deflate immediately, but they need to cool for a minute before we can take them out. My asparagus looks sufficiently floppy. The puddings are now solid enough that I can lift them out. If there's lots of excess grease pooled at the bottom, you can pour some of it out, but the fat is the flavor with Yorkshire puddings. They will keep collapsing, and they will never again be as good as they are right now. So when the puddings are ready, you gotta wrangle everybody to the dining room. Serve it right on that hot tray. Don't burn your table. Normally, I would let people serve themselves and put gravy on their plates, but I need this shot for television. Love a super thick gravy with these mushroom chunks. Nothing fancy, but comfy AF. I'll get a piece of that eye meat here. A rib roast will not cook evenly in a normal oven, and I think that's a feature, not a bug. Some people want their meat pink, some people want it more done. There's something for everyone. There's a slice of cat meat, my favorite. Here's one of those whole roasted onions, which is now jewel sweet and soft and concentrated enough to eat in one bite. Don't sleep on roasted onions. Okay, Brits, tell me in the comments everything I did wrong. I'll be using my superior American teeth to eat these ribs. I know Brits don't have particularly bad teeth. That's just an old stereotype. I'm leaving.